"You're just his daughter, Audrey, not an heir. There's a massive difference between blood and a signature, and I'm the one with the pen." My stepmother, Janice, didn't even look up from her gold-trimmed vanity mirror as she said it. She was busy applying a layer of designer lipstick, the kind that costs more than a week's worth of groceries. Behind her, the sprawling $4 million estate my father had built from the ground up felt like a fortress I was no longer allowed to enter. 2 weeks ago, my father suffered a massive ischemic stroke. One day he was the titan of industry I looked up to, and the next he was a silent passenger in his own body, trapped in a semi-conscious fog. I expected grief. I expected a family coming together. What I got was a locked gate and a legal notice. "Where is he, Janice?" I asked, my voice reaching that dangerous level of calm that people usually mistake for weakness. "The hospital said he was discharged 48 hours ago. He needs round-the-clock neurorehabilitation. He needs his specialists." Janice finally turned, her eyes cold and transactional. "He's in a facility that fits the current budget, dear. Between the market crash and his astronomical medical bills, the well ran dry. I've moved him to Lakeside Commons. It's state-funded, but they have beds." Lakeside Commons. I knew that name. As a senior medical billing auditor for one of the largest healthcare networks in the tri-state area, I didn't just know the names of facilities, I knew their secrets. Lakeside was a dumping ground. It was a place where patients were over-medicated to keep them quiet and underattended because the staff-to-patient ratio was a joke. It was a death sentence for someone in my father's condition. A $2 million surgery fund and a diversified retirement portfolio don't just evaporate in 14 days, Janice, I said, stepping closer. She stood up, smoothing out her silk robe. "That's the beauty of a durable power of attorney, Audrey. I manage the estate now. And according to my math, there's nothing left for a specialized daughter who hasn't lived under this roof in 10 years. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a business to launch. My wellness boutique, Serenity Bloom, has its grand opening in 3 weeks. It turns out I'm quite the entrepreneur." She signaled the private security guard, a man my father's money was currently paying for, to escort me out. As the iron gates clicked shut behind me, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call a lawyer to start a 3-year-long probate battle that would leave my father dead before the first hearing. Instead, I sat in my SUV, pulled out my encrypted work laptop, and logged into the National Provider Identifier database. Janice thought she was playing a game of emotions and entitlement. She thought because she had the durable power of attorney, DPOA papers signed in a moment of my father's cognitive decline, she was untouchable. But Janice made one fatal mistake. She forgot what I do for a living. I don't just look at bills, I deconstruct financial anatomy. I track the flow of money through the labyrinth of the U.S. healthcare system. I find the fat in the ledgers, the double billing, and the ghost accounts. I started with my father's primary insurance claims. If Janice claimed the medical costs wiped out his accounts, there would be a paper trail of massive payouts to the surgical center. I pulled the internal ledger for St. Jude's neurological wing, the last place my father was treated. My fingers flew across the keys, bypassing the surface-level patient portals. There it was. The total bill for my father's surgery and ICU stay. $450,000. Insurance coverage, 90%. Patient responsibility, $45,000. Janice had told me the hospital took $2 million. Where was the other $1.95 million? I dug deeper into the assignment of benefits forms. Usually these are standard. But as I scrolled through the digital scans of the paperwork Janice had signed as POA, I saw it, a secondary transfer order. She hadn't paid the hospital. She had reimbursed a third-party management company for in-home specialized equipment that never arrived at the house. And the name of that management company, Bloom Holdings LLC, a shell company. Registered 48 hours after my father's stroke. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hand was steady on the mouse. This wasn't just greed, this was a calculated, cold-blooded liquidation of a dying man's life. She wasn't just a liability to the estate, she was a predator. But I had the ledger now, and in the world of federal medical fraud, the ledger is the only thing that matters. I looked at the clock, 2 a.m. I had 3 weeks until her boutique's grand opening, 3 weeks to build a cage so tight she wouldn't even realize she was inside it until the door locked. Step 1, I needed to see my father. And I needed to see exactly what Lakeside Commons was hiding. I pulled into the cracked asphalt parking lot of Lakeside Commons at 6 a.m. The building looked more like a condemned motel than a medical facility. The smell of industrial bleach and stagnant air hit me the moment I stepped inside. "I'm here to see David Miller," I told the nurse at the front desk. She didn't even look up from her phone. "Room 402B. Second bed, keep it quick, visiting hours start at 10. When I walked into the room, my heart shattered. My father, a man who once commanded boardrooms with a single glance, was lying in a thin, stained gown. The ventilator hummed rhythmically, but the room lacked the basic monitoring equipment a stroke patient requires. No specialized PT, no neurological stimulants, just a flickering fluorescent light. I checked his chart. He was being administered heavy doses of lorazepam. "Why is he sedated?" I demanded, catching a passing orderly. "Standard protocol for agitated patients, ma'am," he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. "He's not agitated. He's nonverbal," I snapped. "You're sedating him so you don't have to staff this wing properly." I didn't argue further. I knew how this system worked. Instead, I took high-resolution photos of the facility's lack of equipment and the medication logs. This wasn't just neglect, this was elder financial exploitation and medical endangerment. As I left, I received a Google alert I'd set up for Serenity Bloom Boutique. Janice was posting on Instagram. She was at a high-end interior design gala, laughing with a glass of champagne. "Success is the best revenge," her caption read. "No, Janice, I thought, justice is." I spent the next 3 days buried in the durable power of attorney DPOA documents Janice had filed with the county. I've audited thousands of these and usually they are airtight, but Janice was arrogant. She had used a standard template she'd likely downloaded online, thinking a signature was all that mattered. I found it on page 7, paragraph 4. The agent's power to withdraw from the Miller Family Trust is limited to the health and welfare of the principal, specifically excluding any commingling of trust funds with external business ventures without a secondary audit. Janice had missed that one line. She thought because she had the durable status, she could move money anywhere. But she had moved $1.95 million from a medical trust into Bloom Holdings LLC to fund her boutique. By law, that wasn't a withdrawal. It was a conversion of assets. I called my contact, Marcus, a forensic accountant who specializes in piercing the corporate veil. "Audrey, this is messy," Marcus said over the phone, his voice echoing the tapping of keys. "She didn't just spend the money. She used the trust's credit rating to secure a $500,000 small business loan for the boutique's inventory. She's leveraged your father's primary residence as collateral for the lease." "So, if the boutique fails, he loses the house?" I asked, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. "Worse, if the IRS audits that shell company, they'll seize everything. But here's the kicker, she signed the lease as manager of Bloom Holdings, but the initial deposit came directly from the St. Jude's refund check. She didn't even bother to wash the money through a second account. She was a classic liability. She wanted the lifestyle of a CEO without the discipline of an auditor. She was playing house with stolen money. "Marcus, I need a formal elder abuse financial report, and I need it filed with the state's attorney general's office by Friday," I said. "What about the boutique opening?" "Let her have her party," I whispered. "I want every socialite, every local news reporter, and every potential investor in that room when the floor drops out." I spent the rest of the week coordinating with a private medical transport team. I wasn't just going to take her money, I was going to take back my father. But I had to be careful. In the USA, if you move a patient under POA control without a court order, it's considered kidnapping. I needed a cease and desist backed by a temporary restraining order against her POA status. I visited my father one last time at Lakeside. I leaned in close to his ear. Dad, I found the line she missed, I whispered. Hold on for 3 more days, I'm bringing you home. For the first time since the stroke, his fingers twitched against the bedsheet. The stage was set. Janice was busy ordering $500, a plate catering, and inviting the town's elite to witness her triumph. She was so focused on the sparkle of the boutique that she didn't see the auditor standing in the shadows, counting every single cent she'd stolen. And in the world of auditing, the bill always comes due. The day before the grand opening, the atmosphere in the city was buzzing. Janice had spent a fortune on local PR. Billboards for Serenity Bloom were everywhere, ironic, considering the chaos she had caused in my father's life. I spent my afternoon in a sterile, white-walled office with Detective Miller from the Financial Crimes Unit and an investigator from Adult Protective Services, APS. On the desk between us sat a 300-page binder, my masterpiece. You've done our job for us, Audrey, Detective Miller said, flipping through the highlighted bank statements. The way she cycled the medical trust funds into the boutique's payroll account is, well, it's blatant. She thought the durable clause gave her a blank check, I explained, my voice steady. She didn't realize that under the Uniform Power of Attorney Act, she has a fiduciary duty. By using his medical funds for a retail startup while he's in a state-funded facility, she hasn't just breached a contract. She's committed a felony, the investigator leaned forward. We have the court order to freeze the accounts, but why wait for the opening? We can pick her up now. No, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. In the USA, public perception is everything. If you arrest her now, she'll claim she's a victim of a misunderstanding between family members. But if we wait until the boutique is officially open, until every dollar of that stolen money is physically represented in that inventory, we don't just stop her. We reclaim the assets. Because of the commingling of funds clause I discovered, legal precedent dictated that if a business is started with 100% misappropriated funds, the business itself becomes the property of the victim's estate. Janice wasn't just building her dream, she was accidentally building my father's recovery fund. I spent the rest of the day finalizing the logistics. I didn't just want her in handcuffs, I wanted my father out of that hellhole. I used my own savings to secure a private suite at the Willows, the best neurorehab center in the country. The transport team was on standby. That night I received a text from Janice. It was a photo of her in a $5,000 gown holding a glass of crystal. Too bad you couldn't make the VIP preview tonight, Audrey. I'd have let you work the coat check. It's the only way you'd ever get close to this kind of success. I didn't reply, I just looked at the writ of attachment on my desk. The next morning, the sun rose over the city, shining brightly on the glass facade of Serenity Bloom. The street was lined with luxury cars. A literal red carpet was rolled out on the sidewalk. I arrived an hour after the ceremony began. I wasn't wearing a gown. I was wearing my professional charcoal suit, my auditor's badge clipped to my belt, and a folder tucked under my arm. As I walked toward the entrance, the security guard, the same one who had escorted me off my father's property, tried to block my path. "Private event, miss, you're not on the list." "Actually," I said, handing him a laminated sheet of paper. "I'm the new landlord, and I think you'll find that your name isn't on the new payroll." I walked past him as his face went pale. Inside, the boutique was stunning. Marble floors, gold leaf shelving, and racks of high-end wellness products that cost more than my first car. Janice was in the center of a circle of socialites basking in the glow of camera flashes. "Janice," I called out. The room didn't go silent immediately, but the tone shifted. She turned, her smile curdling like sour milk. "Audrey, I thought I made it clear you aren't welcome here. Security? Don't bother," I said, stepping onto the small stage where she had just given her speech. I turned to the crowd, many of whom were local influencers and business owners. "Ladies and gentlemen, I hate to interrupt such a serene event, but there's been a slight change in the programming. My name is Audrey Miller. I am the daughter of David Miller, and as of 10 minutes ago, I am the court-appointed conservator of his estate." Janice stepped forward, her face flushed with rage. You're lying, I have the POA, I have the legal right. You had a POA, Janice, I interrupted, pulling out the signed revocation order. But when you used a medical trust to buy $50,000 worth of Italian silk rugs for this floor, you committed self-dealing. Under the elder financial exploitation laws, your authority was stripped effective immediately. The room went deathly quiet. I could hear the hum of the expensive air conditioning system, the one paid for by my father's heart medication fund. This boutique, I continued, gesturing to the room, was built with stolen money. Every candle, every shelf, and every bottle of essential oil belongs to the David Miller Living Trust, and we are officially closed for business. Behind me, the front doors opened. It wasn't more guests. It was the sheriff's department, followed by a team of forensic liquidators. Janice's glass of champagne slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor. The sound was like a starting gun. The shattering of the glass was the only sound in the room for a full 5 seconds. Janice looked down at the sparkling shards of crystal on the marble floor, marble that my father's surgery fund had paid for. "You can't do this," she shrieked, her voice cracking as the socialites she had worked so hard to impress began to pull away. "This is my business. I am the owner of Serenity Bloom." "Actually, Janice," I said, stepping off the stage and handing a folder to the sheriff, "you are the owner of a massive amount of debt and a looming criminal indictment. This business, it's an asset of the estate. And since the estate is now under my control, I'm liquidating the inventory to pay for the care you denied my father." 2 deputies stepped forward. One of them pulled out a pair of handcuffs. "Janice Miller, you're under arrest for elder financial exploitation, grand larceny, and wire fraud," the deputy announced. The cameras that were meant to capture her triumph were now flashing in her face for a very different reason. The local news reporter, who Janice had invited for a puff piece, was already whispering into her microphone about the biggest financial scandal of the year. "Audrey, please," Janice hissed as the cuffs clicked shut around her wrists. "We're family, we can talk about this, I'll give the money back." "The money is already gone, Janice. You spent it on gold leaf shelving and designer shoes," I replied, my voice as cold as the ledgers I'd audited. "But don't worry. The forensic accountants have already mapped out every cent. Since you commingled the funds, the IRS is also interested in that small business loan you took out under false pretenses. That's a federal issue." As they led her out the front door, past the red carpet and the stunned crowd, she wasn't a wellness mogul anymore. She was just a liability being removed from the equation. I didn't stay to watch her get into the police cruiser. I had a much more important appointment. I drove straight to the Willows. When I walked into the private suite, the difference was night and day. Sunlight streamed through large windows that overlooked a manicured garden. A team of 2 specialized nurses and a physical therapist were already working with my father. He was sitting up, supported by pillows, the hum of the high-end monitoring equipment a soothing melody compared to the silence of Lakeside Commons. "How is he?" I asked the doctor. "He's responsive, Audrey. The sedation they had him on at the other facility was criminal. He's already started to track movement with his eyes. It's going to be a long road, but he's fighting." I sat by his bed and took his hand. "The boutique is gone, Dad. I sold the inventory to a liquidator this afternoon. The house is back in the trust, and Janice is exactly where she belongs." His fingers gripped mine. It wasn't a twitch this time, it was a conscious, firm hold. The aftermath was swift. Because Janice had used the father's primary residence as collateral for her boutique's lease, and because the boutique was declared a fraudulent venture, the court nullified the lien. Janice's personal assets, her jewelry, her cars, and her designer wardrobe were seized to pay back the medical trust she had depleted. She thought she was the heir because she had a signature. She forgot that a signature without integrity is just ink on paper. 6 months later, I sat in the garden at the Willows with my father. He was in a wheelchair, and while his speech was still slow, his mind was sharp. He watched the sunset the same way he used to from the balcony of his estate. "You found the line," he whispered, his voice raspy but clear. "I'm an auditor, Dad," I said, leaning my head on his shoulder. "I always find the line." In the end, Janice didn't just lose the money, she lost her reputation, her freedom, and her future. She wanted to be a success story, but she ended up as a cautionary tale, a footnote in a ledger that finally perfectly balanced out. Accountability isn't just a professional standard, it's a force of nature. And in the anatomy of revenge, the smartest move isn't to get loud, it's to get the facts. Because the truth doesn't need to scream, it just needs to be audited.